Hey everybody, welcome back to Rachel Reads. My name is Rachel. I love to read and write Christian fiction, and today I'm going to be recommending books based on some fairy tale retellings. So I have a list of fairy tale retellings and then a specific book I'm going to recommend for that retelling. And this is just a short list. There's really no specific idea with it, but there are some really great retellings out there, and a lot of them are by indie authors. So I really recommend checking them out. There's going to be one honorable mention at the end that is not a fairy tale retelling, but it feels very much like a fairy tale retelling. So yeah, let's just go ahead and get started. I have a pretty big stack of books, and if I miss a fairy tale that you just absolutely love and want a recommendation for it, comment it down below and I will do my best to get your recommendation. I didn't include all fairy tale retellings I have read. I just included some of my favorites, but if there's one you really want, let me know and I will do my best to get one to you. For some of these recommendations, I did bring my computer back like in last week's video. So for some recommendations, I do have my computer up and I'll have a picture up on the screen of whatever book it is I'm talking about. For the first one, I have Rapunzel, and the first recommendation I wrote down was The Abandoned Princess by Melanie Sellier. This is obviously retelling of Rapunzel, and this is the 6th book in the 3rd series of the Four Kingdoms world, and it is probably my favorite Rapunzel retelling by far. I've read, I think, three and a half, kind of. I'll talk about the half in a little bit. But this is probably my favorite. I love our characters' dynamics. It's very funny, but also just very heartwarming and so interesting. But the half I want to talk about is a book I decided to add to the list because it has some similar Rapunzel vibes, but it's not a Rapunzel retelling. And that book is The Lost Rose by Victoria Lynn. I had to talk about it. I read this book recently and literally loved it. I stayed up so late just finishing this book. It is 600 pages long, but like the first little bit feels very much like Rapunzel. Like I said, it's not a retelling of Rapunzel, but it has some very similar ideas of Rapunzel and the whole story. If you like Rapunzel, but you want something different, I would recommend this because it's not exactly Rapunzel, but at the same time it kind of is. And it's just a great book, made me cry, 6 stars, amazing. The next fairy tale retelling I'm going to talk about is The 12 Dancing Princesses. If y'all have seen the Barbie movie, it's amazing. That was like the first time I've been introduced to that fairy tale, and I love it. But for that recommendation, I'm going to recommend Entwined by Heather Dixon. It was clean. It was, like I said, 12 Dancing Princesses, and it was just so good. I really love this book. It's 472 pages, so if you want something kind of chunky but not as much as The Lost Rose, this is a great book. It has some like magic. It's very Beauty and the Beast style magic, so like some of the items in the castle are alive. But it's really good, and I love our main character Azalea. The romance in here is really sweet, and I don't know, I love the 12 Dancing Princesses, and this just did so amazing with all of the sisters' dynamics and all of the shenanigans that go on. Just a great story. The next one I want to talk about, I don't talk about much, but I know sometimes it's really popular and sometimes it's not, but that is Mulan. I know Disney has their versions and the cartoon one is amazing. But if you're looking for a Mulan retelling, I would recommend The Warrior Maiden by Melanie Dickerson. It has been a while since I read this, but I do really enjoy the story of it. From what I remember, it was really good, and I had been thinking about it recently because she's an archer, but she doesn't do well with swords, which plays into the story, but it was extremely interesting, and when I read it, I enjoyed it, so I would try checking it out if you like Mulan. The next one I want to talk about is The Nutcracker. I am a huge Nutcracker fan. I love the music, I love the story. I haven't read too many retellings. I think about three-ish retellings of The Nutcracker, but the one I'm going to recommend is The Enchanted Sonata by Heather Dixon, and in this book it's Heather Dixon wall work, So if you look it up, it's Heather Dixon Walwork. She's the same author of Entwine, but I love this story. I love the musical aspects and the Nutcracker and just so many different ideas. It was just so amazing and so wintry. It's just a great book to get into. But if you want a Nutcracker that is not a fantasy, I would try A Lady's Guide to Marvels and Misadventure by Angela Bell. I love that book so much. I read it a few months ago and literally just amazing. A great and stunning book. So much I could highlight or tab. Just a great book. The next fairy tale I want to talk about is The Ugly Duckling, and for that I'm going to pick Castle of Refuge by Melanie Dickerson. So she writes these young adult historical ones, and they take place in about the 1300s. This is book 2. A lot of people, book 1 wasn't their favorite, so there's that. If you want to read book 1, I would, just because there's a big spoiler for something about it in this book. I didn't read book 1 before this, and I still really enjoyed this one. The next somewhat fairy tale I want to talk about is Anastasia. I know it's not a technical fairy tale like Mulan isn't, but there's one really fun retelling I want to talk about, and that would be Romanoff by Nadine Brandes. This is, like I said, a retelling. There is some magic in here, and it's been a while since I reread it for a lot of these, but I really enjoyed it. This story has a great message of forgiveness, a really cute romance, and it is really short. The next retelling I want to talk about is 'Twas the Night Before Christmas. This isn't so much a fairy tale, but it is a very common like Christmas thing when you're growing up, to hear about this idea, 'Twas the Night Before Christmas. And if you love those whimsical vibes from that story, I really would recommend the Winter Soul series by Jennifer Kropp. Book 1 is A Soul as Cold as Frost. I recently finished the series and I loved it so much. The last chapter was hilarious and funny, and I wish there was more to that last chapter, because there's some certain character dynamics I want to see, and I wish they had a novella. But I'm not going to complain because I got what I wanted. And it's just a really great book. The next book I'm going to talk about is The Little Mermaid. This is my favorite Disney princess movie. The one I picked is A Princess of Wind and Wave by Melanie Sellier. This is very interesting for a Little Mermaid retelling. It has some great aspects to it, some interesting family drama. It's a good Melanie Sellier book. And I love The Little Mermaid about it, so there's that. The next one I want to talk about is Swan Lake, and there's not a lot of Swan Lake retellings. I know there are some authors who have them, and I know Melanie Dickerson had a few like Swan retelling books, but this one, whenever I think about it, it just makes me happy. I love this book in the series, and that is actually book 5, coming before the book I just talked about. And that is A Captive of Wing and Feather by Melanie Sellier. This comes before the Little Mermaid retelling, and this is probably my favorite in the series, possibly. I don't know if it's my absolute favorite, but it's one of my favorites. And I just loved our character dynamics. I loved the theme in this book. The theme is one of my favorites to see in any book, and I love that. I love the characters. It was very short but very well done. The next one I want to talk about is if you want a book kind of like Princess Diaries 1 and 2. If you want a book that has that same sort of girl finds out she's a princess, I would recommend In Search of a Prince by Toni Shiloh. This is contemporary romance. It is Christian. It has some really great faith discussions through like the first 75% of the book. Very much the Princess Diaries combination of 1 and 2. And I love this story. Very much feels just like a fairy tale, but in a contemporary setting. Better than a Hallmark movie by a long shot, but at the same time has that cute feel to it. The next one I want to talk about is Alice in Wonderland. And have I read any other Alice retellings besides this one? No. Do I want to? Yes, because I know there's more out there. But I'm going to recommend The Wonderland Trials and The Looking Glass Illusion, which is book 2, part of the Curious Realities duology by Sarah Ella. My favorite books by her, amazing books. So this is like dystopian fantasy set in the future of England, and there's a fantasy world, great faith themes, a good romance, just a great story, very Alice in Wonderland. This next book is not a fairy tale, but it is a good retelling, and I don't see a lot of biblical retellings. So if you want a retelling of Esther, try First Day by Chris McGee. This is an older book, but it's still so good. Like I said, it's an Esther retelling. Esther is my favorite book in the Bible. I mean, it's hard to pick a favorite, but I love Esther and I love her story. And this is a great retelling of it. I loved our characters and the character dynamic. There's just so much great faith content, and seeing the characters just live out their faith in a great way. Next retelling is one I think I've only read one of, but I know there's another one that I want to read. I just haven't yet, but I'm going to recommend the one I have read, and that is Rumpelstiltskin. So if you want a good retelling, I would recommend The Princess Pact by Melanie Sellier. This is my favorite book in the original series. A lot of people, I don't think this is their favorite, but I love our characters, Rafe and Marie. I love their dynamic. I love the femininity portrayed in Marie and how she's just a very feminine princess, but she learns these kind of skills of knife throwing. Like, she's not automatically good at it, which I appreciated when I first read this book. I love Rafe. He is amazing. I love the themes of just family and who your true family is. Rumpelstiltskin's very interesting, but I love this book. The last book I want to talk about today is an honorable mention because it is not a fairy tale retelling, but it's by an indie author, and if you want an original story that's not a retelling, but it has the same feelings of fairy tales and fairy tale retellings, I highly recommend Ariadne and the Legend of the Fire Rose by Christy A. Cole. She is a fellow booktuber, and she wrote this book. It came out at the beginning of this year. I was so blessed to be an ARC reader for this book, and I literally loved it. So that is all the retellings I'm going to recommend to you today. Like I mentioned before, if there's a fairy tale I did mention and you want a retelling of it, comment down below and I'll do my best to either get you a recommendation I have read or get you one that I know is clean. I know there's a few authors I follow that do just clean books, so I'll try to get you a recommendation for those if I haven't read that retelling yet, but a lot of them I have, so go ahead and ask for it. If you have recommendations for me for Little Mermaid or anything, let me know, and I really want to check them out. There's so many authors that I haven't checked out yet that I need to. So yeah, that's all for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope God blesses you today. I do my best to post Tuesdays at 12:30, and I'll see you next time. Bye!